How indignant can progressives make themselves? There's a real competition going on, and it's sweeping the nation. Progressive versus progressive competing to see who can most flamboyantly claim to be offended, to proclaim that their feelings have been hurt, or that their sensitivities have been rubbed raw, or their serenity disturbed, or their composure discombobulated by something that someone has said, or by something they have seen.
Once hotbeds of free speech, college campuses across the country have engaged in an arms race to see who can craft the most restrictive speech code. Years of political correctness, binge drinking, and dropping Bing cherries out of your ass into a shot glass have bred a backlash now where anyone who dares to stray outside the conventional school of wisdom in college is ostracized, slapped with the mark of Cain, and worst of all, made to forfeit their student activity fee discount to see Dave Matthews Jam, and more importantly, Inspire during spring fling on the quad. You know, whatever happened to the notion that college was a place where the best minds in the nation vigorously debated all sides of an issue while the rest of us went back to the dorm and tried to get laid?
You should feel sorry for the progressive sensitivity enforcers. Those who constantly find reason to take offense are rarely happy people. The problem, however, is that such people make almost everyone else miserable too.
I have no problem with people who respond to what they don't agree with. I enjoy the drama of a toppled podium and the sound of microphone feedback as much as the next guy. What I do have a problem with are the people who fail to see the glaring hypocrisy of screaming the word "shut up" into a bullhorn. Why should even the most repugnant ideas receive the same freedom of expression as more accepted ones? Because the American system is less a free marketplace of ideas than it is a playground of free ideas. And the best way to dispense with the unpopular ideas is to let them roam free on the playground so they can have their asses kicked up and down the jungle gym by the cool ideas. You know?
Rape is a horrific crime, and rapists are rightfully despised. We have strict laws against sexual assault that everyone wants to see enforced. But while rape is certainly a very serious problem, there is simply no evidence of a national campus rape epidemic, and there is certainly no evidence that sexual violence is a cultural norm in 21st century America. In fact, rates of rape in the US are very low, and they've been declining for decades. Why would it be any different on a college campus? Where then does the 1 in 5 rate that Vice President Biden cites come from? Well, it turns out it comes from a study conducted over the internet at 2 large universities, one in the Midwest and one in the South. The survey was anonymous, no one's claims were verified, and terms were not clearly defined. In round numbers, a total of 5,000 women participated. Based on their responses, the authors, not the participants, determined that 1,000 had been victims of some type of non-consensual or unwanted sexual contact. And voila! From one vaguely worded, unscientific survey, we suddenly arrive at a rape culture on college campuses. Tellingly, the study authors have since explicitly stated that it's inappropriate to use their survey to make that claim.
When I was in college, I went to Rutgers from 1981 to 1985. One of the things that was fascinating about that period was that actually I think there was still the remnant of free speech. And the passion for free speech, especially on campuses of universities and colleges, because they were seen precisely as the sort of place where you should experiment with all kinds of expression and all kinds of thought, and everything should be allowed. I'm not exactly sure what happened. I mean, there was definitely a sense among my graduate professors who went to school in the 60s. They were much more open-minded. They were as ardently left-wing generally as a group as the people who came after them, the next generation of academics. But they were much more interested in a kind of free speech movement-inspired academic discourse and using the classroom not as a place to push or to shove political ideas down people's throats, but rather to have conversation. And it seems to me that it was the people after that who had fully imbibed a kind of sense that dialogue was some form of repressive tolerance. I mean, that they had drawn out of a kind of 60s experience that if you allow for open debate, you're actually kind of allowing the status quo to kind of continue, and they felt that, you know, that needed to be stopped, because the minute that you started kind of engaging in dialogue, you were giving up the game. And I'm not sure exactly why that happened, but it did seem to be what was going on.
We need to let those who repulse us have their say alongside those whose speeches make us rise to our feet in applause. How else will the shiny pearl of wisdom stick out against the black velvet of stupidity?
I don't get the fact that Hollywood is so liberal that someone was just hissing there at a joke that was supportive of black people. Just because we mention black. See, it's not about
yeah.
It's just about you mention race. It used to be like you actually make a racist joke.
Yeah.
Now you do something to do with race, and some people hiss.
Yeah, that's the way things are. We've well, you know, I mean, was it Ricky Gervais's Caitlyn Jenner joke? Was it transphobic or
What was
not?
the joke?
It was something about the car accident.
Oh yeah.
Was
right.
it not, right?
Yes, right.
And there was a lot of flap about it, like this is
Right.
a transphobic. When the content, you know, I'm not weighing in on whether the joke was funny or not, but
Right.
You know, it is. There are certain buzzwords that are instantaneous. They give you a knee-jerk reaction.
What it comes down to is there's two types of people in the world. Those who are most afraid of terror, those who are most afraid of global warming. Now, you can put me in the terror camp. I can't worry about the Earth right now. I'm too worried about the world. And the thing that worries me the most in the world is radical Islam, obviously, and increasingly, might I add, moderate Islam, because I'm starting to wonder when you guys are going to declare a fatwa on the assholes within your own organization, all right? I don't have any problem with your faith. I don't even know that much about it. I wouldn't know what the fuck Episcopalians did either. It's time for you to start tightening up your own shit. We can't do it. We can't sit in with you because we look like Johnny Winter with the Wu-Tang Clan. Because like I said, most of us don't care about your faith. We don't have an axe to grind with your faith. But we are starting to bridle at how you treat your women.
I'm going to ask everybody to indulge me for a second. I want to play you something, but before I do, I want to issue with a warning that it's going to be distressing for some of you.
About activity of those people, there will be always, yes, it is freedom of speech, but, and the turning point is but. Why do we still say but when we...
Apologize if that distressed anyone in the room. That is the audio from the Copenhagen shooting. And the shooter chose chillingly the moment to let loose a volley of shots just as the speaker was making the point that when people pretend to defend freedom of speech, they caveat it with the word but. And he decided to choose that moment to let off the shots. He then went, as we all know, to a synagogue and killed some innocent Jewish people. Before that, it was in France at the kosher shop. And before that, it was in Belgium at the museum. And I really want to, first of all, congratulate all of you for being here today, because that was a cafe. This is a synagogue. They had security outside the cafe. They had close protection for the cartoonist. And yet, despite that, this incident occurred. And so it could just as easily occur in London. It could occur here at this very synagogue. And the sheer fact that all of you are here this evening is a testament to your own bravery, to your own courage, to your own determination, to refuse to cower in the face of this terrorism, and to say, by voting with your actions and your feet, never again. We allow ourselves to sleepwalk into an atmosphere in which people feel uncomfortable to speak their minds, in which people are slowly taken out, group by group, one by one. And this sort of obfuscation that we just heard is used. Instead of calling a spade, people say it's not anti-Semitism, it's community tension. It's not about freedom of speech, but if we allow ourselves to sleepwalk into that climate without standing firm and strong and drawing a line as we are doing here this evening, drawing a line in the sand and refusing to be coward, then before we know it, it will be too late. Because the question that we were here to address this evening is, have we reached crisis point? Well, I'll ask you to answer that question based upon the recording that you've just heard. If in Europe today, people are speaking in synagogues or in cafes or in libraries, and they're talking about freedom of speech as the subject, or about anti-Semitism as the subject for discussion that evening, and they feel scared to even enter the hall because they're worried that somebody's going to attack them merely for speaking, then I'd argue that that is a level of crisis point.